What if the one you're destined to love is the one you're fated to destroy? The question haunts the halls of my memory, trailing like incense after fire. I can still taste iron on my tongue, still hear the echo of his heartbeat in my ribs. In a kingdom where magic is forbidden and mercy costs blood, love is the final crime. Tonight, I will tell you the story of how I tried to heal a wound that wanted to bleed. If you're ready to feel every heartbeat, every betrayal, every impossible kiss, listen. The night smelled of rain and antiseptic when I found the first letter. I had been stitching the skin of a dying soldier, my hands trembling with exhaustion. When I returned to my room, a folded parchment waited beneath the door. Its edges were damp, its ink still wet, as if written by a restless conscience. Only 2 words marked it: "I'm sorry," and a single initial, R. I pressed it to my chest, pretending I didn't already know who it was. By day we were rivals, blades drawn behind smiles, bound by royal discipline. He, Riven Elisar, was the king's favored bastard, brilliant, distant, untouchable. I was the daughter of a traitor, tolerated for skill, despised for bloodline. Every glance between us was a duel neither of us could afford to lose. Yet in his letters I saw the man behind the armor, the ache behind the pride. Each word felt like a bruise I didn't want to heal. I kept his letters hidden beneath my mattress, beneath the smell of lavender soap. He wrote of dreams he could never confess aloud. Golden light, trembling hands. He described pain as language, guilt as prayer, healing as sin. I told myself the letters were tricks, tests, traps, but I kept reading. The ink stained my fingertips like blood that refused to wash away, and somehow, I began waiting for the next apology I swore I didn't need. The 3rd letter came with a sentence that refused to let me sleep. If you ever need me, follow the scent of violets at midnight. It was madness to even think of obeying such a summons. Still, that night, the infirmary's corridors filled with that very scent. I walked to the window and saw the moon trembling on wet stone, and in the reflection, his shadow moved, watching, waiting, silent. I told myself it was coincidence, superstition, exhaustion's cruel trick. But my heart beat like a secret drum, summoning something older than reason. In that heartbeat, I knew the line between rival and ruin was already broken. "You're a fool, Mara," I whispered to the candlelight, half laughing, half afraid. The flame flickered once, as if answering, before dying into smoke. And for the first time, I wished it would never be morning again. Morning arrived colder, sharp as polished steel. The palace had sent observers. Men in silver armor lined the infirmary halls, the spiritual guard. They hunted forbidden healers, and rumor said they burned them alive. Riven walked among them now, wearing the royal crest on his shoulder. He didn't look at me, not once, though the air between us thrummed with memory. Every heartbeat felt like betrayal disguised as duty. When he finally spoke, it was formal, clipped. "Healer Mara, your report. No warmth, no tremor, just the practiced calm of a man erasing himself." I handed him the scroll, careful not to touch his fingers. If the others noticed our restraint, they said nothing, but suspicion spreads fast. By nightfall, whispers coiled through the ward. Glowing hands, cursed girl, witch. I smiled through them, though fear licked the edges of my voice. That evening, a note slid beneath my door, unsigned, hurried, terrified. "Don't speak of what you can do. They're watching, even me." I read it 3 times, hearing the quiver of guilt between the lines. Was he warning me, or warning them? I burned the parchment over my lamp, but the words clung to the smoke. The smell of violets lingered, sweet and poisonous. Every corridor felt narrower, every glance heavier. I could feel the guard's eyes on my back like cold hands. Patients whispered prayers as I passed, unsure whether to thank or fear me. Riven avoided me, but absence can be louder than any confession. At night, I caught him pacing outside the ward, his hand over his chest. He left before I could call his name, leaving footprints of ash. The next morning, the commander announced a new mission beyond the city. We were to investigate unholy healing among wounded soldiers. Lists were read aloud, names carved into obligation. When they spoke mine, my stomach turned to stone. Then came the second, his, Riven Elisar. The commander smiled. Together, Perhaps they'll reveal the truth. The battlefield reeked of smoke and wet iron when we arrived. Bodies lay scattered like abandoned prayers, half alive, half gone. The guard kept their distance, muttering blessings against our presence. Riven and I knelt beside the wounded in silence, hands trembling. When I pressed my palms over a soldier's chest, light spilled through my fingers. Golden, blinding, hungry, a secret finally unleashed. Riven's breath caught. "Mara, stop." But I couldn't. The pulse beneath my hands returned, dragging the man back from the brink. The glow faded, leaving me shaking, empty, half alive myself. He turned away, whispering something like a prayer, or a curse. When he faced me again, there was awe in his fear, and a scar of royal magic burned faintly on his wrist. We buried the dead under the gray hush of evening. Ash clung to my lips. Regret clung to his eyes. Neither of us spoke of what we'd seen, yet everything had changed. I wanted to ask, "How long have you hidden what you are?" Instead, I whispered, "The world doesn't want to be healed, does it?" He only said, "Not by hands like ours." Back at camp, the commander questioned me until my voice cracked. Riven's report was sealed before I saw it. He wouldn't meet my eyes. When the interrogation ended, my faith in him had withered to dust. That night, I found violets scattered across my tent floor. No letter this time, just petals glowing faintly in the dark. I crushed them in my fist until the scent made me dizzy. Sleep never came. I watched the horizon burn with false dawn. I imagined his pen moving across parchment somewhere, unable to stop. Maybe he wrote apologies to ghosts now, not to me. Maybe that was all I'd ever been, a wound he couldn't close. The thought hurt worse than any spell could heal. And still, when the wind shifted, I listened for his voice. The palace glittered like a promise made of lies, every candle a disguise for sin. I wasn't meant to be there, yet I stood among nobles wearing a borrowed mask. The music ached, strings trembling like veins beneath polished skin. Riven moved through the crowd beside the princess, their grace rehearsed. Every step they shared cut another thread inside me, quiet and precise. Still, when his eyes found mine across the room, the world forgot how to breathe. He dropped a silk handkerchief as he passed, deliberate, unmistakable. The crest stitched in its corner belonged to the infirmary, our secret code. I reached for it, but another hand caught it first, the commander's. He smiled without warmth, eyes sharp as razors dipped in faith. "Curious symbol," he murmured, folding it carefully into his pocket. My pulse stumbled, my throat filling with the taste of warning. I forced myself to stay, to dance, to pretend ignorance like a shield. The princess laughed, the chandeliers burned, and I felt my life unravel. Riven's smile, too perfect, too false, was a blade turned inward. When the waltz ended, he vanished through a side corridor of gold. I followed the scent of violets, foolish heart guiding reckless feet. Every echo whispered, "This will be your undoing." The courtyard beyond was drowned in moonlight, cold and endless. He waited there, mask half removed, eyes raw with something unspoken. "You shouldn't have come," he said, voice rough from silence. "Then why call me?" I asked, and he flinched like it was truth. We stood close enough for forgiveness, too far for touch. The moon slid behind clouds, as if unwilling to watch. He pressed a folded parchment into my palm, his hand shaking. "If anything happens, don't open it. Burn it," he whispered. His gaze darted toward the archway. Footsteps echoed beyond. Before I could answer, he turned, disappearing into shadow. I should have left. I should have obeyed the warning. But the heart doesn't listen when danger sounds like love. I returned to the hall, breathless. Mask cracked at the edge. The commander's eyes found me instantly, like fate rehearsed. He bowed with mockery, voice silked with poison. "I do hope you enjoyed the ball, Healer Mara." His hand brushed his pocket where the handkerchief slept. And just like that, I knew he had seen everything. Rain chased me through the forest until the ruins rose from the mist. Their stones glistened like bones, carved with prayers too old to name. Vines crawled across archways, clutching fragments of forgotten gods. The air hummed with a power that recognized my blood. Riven was waiting in the courtyard, cloak soaked, eyes hollow. "Why are you here?" he asked. "But I heard I needed you to come." We searched the ruins together, our silence heavier than grief. Ancient words shimmered on the walls, pulsing faintly with gold. I brushed my fingers across one inscription and felt it breathe. The name carved beside it was my father's, chiseled into history, and beside it, half erased but undeniable, Riven Elisar. My knees gave out as the truth roared between us. "You knew," I whispered, the sound barely human. His answer was a confession carved from sorrow. "I was sent to find you, Mara, to end what your father began." I laughed then, the kind that sounds too close to breaking. All this time, every letter was a chain. He reached for me, voice trembling. No, they were prayers. The ground shuddered beneath us, the air splitting with magic. Our joined presence had awakened the ruins themselves. Light burst from the carvings, a chorus of memory and fire. Wind howled through the arches, carrying the voice of the dead, bound by blood, healed by betrayal. The stones whispered, and the commander's voice followed, cold and near. "Now we see." Soldiers emerged from the shadows, weapons glinting like verdicts. Riven stepped in front of me, blade drawn, eyes blazing with guilt. I wanted to scream at him, to curse, to forgive, all at once. Instead, I whispered the only truth I had left. If love is a sin, then we were born damned. And as the first arrow flew, the ruins came alive with light. The last thing I saw was him turning toward me, mouth forming my name. Then the explosion of gold and dust swallowed everything whole. Silence claimed the world, sweet and merciless. Somewhere within it, I thought I heard his voice say, "I'm sorry," and for the first time, I believed him. Darkness closed like a promise around my heart. When I woke, the sky was bleeding embers instead of light. Smoke wrapped around the ruins like a shroud of punishment. My body ached, as if carved from someone else's sorrow. Riven knelt beside me, his hands trembling, his mouth whispering my name. Each syllable burned against my skin, half curse, half prayer. "I thought I lost you," he said, voice breaking like glass. We were both wounded, yet somehow alive when no one should be. The commander and his men were gone, swallowed by the collapse. The earth had chosen mercy, or maybe vengeance disguised as grace. I felt warmth radiate from his palm where it touched my wrist. Our magic had fused. His heartbeat echoed beneath my ribs. We were stitched together by survival and sin. He tried to pull away, but the pain followed him, mirrored in me. "Every hurt you bear, I feel," he said, terror flickering in his eyes. I pressed my hand to his chest. His pulse throbbed beneath my touch. "It means neither of us can lie anymore," I whispered. He looked at me as though truth itself were unbearable. Outside, thunder carried the sound of distant horns. We stumbled toward the forest edge, guided by the scent of rain. The kingdom would already know something had happened. If the guards survived, they would call us heretics, conspirators, worse. He wanted to hide. I wanted to atone, to finish what began in blood. Between us stretched a silence full of unspoken promises, and somewhere behind that silence, destiny waited, patient and cruel. That night we found a cottage abandoned to ivy and ghosts. We lit a fire that refused to stay still, its shadows restless. He slept by the doorway, blade across his knees, eyes half open. I watched him, memorizing the quiet rise of his chest. Part of me wanted to wake him just to say thank you. The rest feared he'd vanish if I spoke his name too loud. Before sleep claimed me, I whispered into the dark, "What are we now?" No answer came, only the echo of rain against the roof. Somewhere within that sound, I heard the faintest heartbeat. Mine or his, I couldn't tell anymore. They moved as one. Love had become a wound we kept reopening, and I was already reaching for the blade. We returned to the capital under borrowed daylight and careful lies. The streets whispered, hungry for new rumors to feed the throne. I hid beneath a hood, pretending to be no one worth noticing. But the banners already screamed his name. Riven Elisar, royal consort. The words pierced deeper than any dagger ever could. He hadn't told me because he couldn't. Duty had told him first. The proclamation came during the coronation of the new eclipse. He knelt before the princess, a picture of loyalty and grief. The crowd erupted, gold petals raining like mockery. I watched from the balcony, frozen between disbelief and clarity. So this is what salvation looks like, I thought. A lie in royal colors. He lifted his eyes once, and they found me through the sea of faces. Later, in the empty chapel, I confronted him beneath the stained glass. "Tell me it's not true," I said, though truth already filled the room. He didn't answer, just reached for my hand and stopped halfway. "It's to keep them from killing you," he whispered. "So you sell your soul and call it mercy?" My tears tasted like metal. His silence tasted worse. He slid a ring from his finger, pressing it into my palm. "Keep it," he said, "so you'll remember who I really am." I wanted to throw it back, to shatter the illusion he built. Instead, I closed my fist around it until it cut my skin. Pain was easier than believing him again. Outside, church bells rang like distant apologies. That night I wrote him a letter I'd never send. In it I confessed every dream I'd buried beneath his name. Then I tore it apart, each word a fragment of something irretrievable. Ash scattered across the floor, glowing faintly before dying. When I opened the window, violets climbed the sill again. Their scent asked a question I was too tired to answer. By dawn, the city was awake with celebration and deceit. Trumpets blared, and the princess paraded through the gates. I watched her smile, wondering if she could see the ghost behind him. Somewhere within the noise, a bird sang the wrong note. It felt like an omen wearing the skin of music, and I knew the quiet before collapse never lasts long. I packed what little I owned, which was mostly regret and half-truths. The infirmary smelled of dust and final goodbyes. Every bed reminded me of the hands I couldn't save. I found one letter still hidden beneath my mattress, untouched by fire. When I opened it, the ink shimmered, refusing to fade. He'd spelled a charm inside, a promise meant to protect me. I should have burned it as he'd once told me to, but instead I traced each word with my fingertip. Trembling, the paper pulsed like skin, alive with forbidden light. "Why won't you let me hate you?" I whispered to no one. Outside, thunder rolled, dragging memories across the sky. It smelled like the night we first met in blood and rain. A knock shattered the quiet. It wasn't gentle or kind. 2 guards waited, their armor dripping with authority. "The commander requests your presence," they said. My heart dropped. I'd known this moment would come. As they led me through the corridors, torches flickered in sympathy. Every shadow seemed to whisper, "Run." They took me not to a cell, but to the royal courtyard. There he stood beside the princess, expression carved from stone. Our eyes met, and I saw what silence looks like when it bleeds. "Charges of heresy," the commander announced, savoring each word. The crowd murmured, feeding on fear like carrion birds. Riven said nothing. That hurt more than any sentence could. When the hearing ended, I was to be imprisoned until the next eclipse. I didn't plead. I'd already lost the only truth that mattered. In the carriage's dark belly, I clutched the glowing letter. Its warmth seeped through my palm, stubborn and loyal. Maybe it was his way of saying, "Forgive me one last time." Maybe it was mine to say never. As the gates closed behind me, I looked once more at the city. Banners fluttered like scars across the morning sky. Every sound felt distant, hollow, already memory. I whispered to the wind, "I will not die as your secret." The wind answered with silence and the scent of violets, and I swore that would be the last time I wept for him. Eclipses bring masquerades, and masquerades bring ghosts. The guard prepared my execution for the next celestial alignment, but fate, as ever, prefers irony to justice. The princess herself arranged a celebration on the eve of my death. In the chaos of masks and revelry, shadows blur their loyalties. A friend among the healers slipped me a key and a prayer. I dressed in a stolen gown, black as spilled ink. Chains hid beneath its silk folds like reluctant jewelry. As the guards turned drunk with music, I fled into the crowd. Lanterns swayed overhead, casting faces that weren't real. Every smile looked like a threat wearing perfume. Still, freedom tasted too close to stop. I found him near the fountain where we once argued about mercy. His mask was half gold, half sorrow, his posture weary of pretending. "Mara," he breathed, the word shaking the air between us. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," I answered. We stood at the edge of the water, reflections trembling apart. And for a heartbeat, the world dared to be kind. Then a scream cut through the music, a body collapsing mid-dance. The commander fell, an arrow blooming from his chest. Gasps became panic, panic became blame, blame became my name. "Seize her!" someone shouted, and the spell shattered. Riven reached for me, but soldiers closed in like jaws. The mask cracked under my breath as I whispered. It wasn't me. They dragged me through marble halls slick with spilled wine. Every step echoed the heartbeat that refused to die. I searched Riven's face as they bound my wrists, desperate for anything, but he looked at me with the same emptiness I'd once seen in mirrors. It was the price of survival, and we both were paying. By dawn, I was a prisoner again, but this time without faith. In the cell's darkness, I replayed the arrow's path 100 times. Someone had planned it, but not for justice, for distraction. The kingdom was shifting, and I was its perfect scapegoat. I closed my eyes and saw only his silence. "I loved you," I whispered to the stone. It didn't echo back. Even walls get tired of hearing lies. Days dissolved into the slow poison of waiting. The dungeon smelled of damp iron and forgotten prayers. I counted heartbeats until numbers lost meaning. Each night, the same dream returned. Violets blooming from chains. When I woke, their scent clung to the air, stubborn, impossible. He was haunting me, or I was haunting him. One evening, the door creaked open. Torchlight sliced the dark. Riven entered alone, cloak heavy with rain. His face was drawn, the crown's shadow etched into his eyes. "I can free you," he said softly, "but you must vanish." I laughed. It sounded like something breaking clean in two. "You already made me disappear." He flinched, kneeling beside me, fingers brushing the cuffs. "They're watching every breath I take," he murmured. "I lied to protect you, Mara. I'd lie again if it meant you lived." I turned my face away, tears burning like betrayal reborn. "You can't heal what you've killed," I said. He whispered, "Then let me die with it." Footsteps thundered above, guards changing shifts. We had minutes, maybe less, before discovery. He pressed a key into my palm, the metal warm from his skin. "Go when you hear the bells," he said, eyes shining with ruin. I wanted to ask if he'd follow, but I already knew the answer. Some vows are prisons made of choice. When he left, the cell felt larger and emptier all at once. I stared at the key until the bells began to toll. Each chime was a heartbeat, each heartbeat a farewell. I unlocked the door, stepping into a corridor of gold light. The walls pulsed like veins, alive with forbidden energy. Freedom had never looked so much like grief. At the corridor's end waited a spiral stair to the courtyard. The eclipse was rising. The air trembled under divine weight. I climbed, clutching the key like a relic of impossible mercy. Above, I saw him on the balcony beside the princess, eyes searching. Our gazes met one last time, and the world held its breath. The first bell ended, the second began, and fate unfurled. Wind tore through the courtyard like something alive and furious. The eclipse had reached its center, a wound in the heavens. Guards shouted, bells clanged, and light fractured into shards. I ran, cloak snapping behind me, the key burning in my palm. Every corridor pulsed with the kingdom's dying heartbeat. Somewhere above it all, he was waiting, bound by choice. When I burst into the grand hall, the air smelled of iron and ozone. The princess stood before the throne, blade drawn, eyes unholy. Riven faced her, crown tilted, sorrow cutting deeper than steel. I heard her say, "You loved a traitor, and now you'll die like one." Magic surged from her blade, a river of white fire. He didn't move, he only whispered my name. Instinct overcame fear. I threw the key between them. It struck the marble, splitting open a circle of light. The ruin's ancient magic, awakened once again, screamed through stone. Walls bent, banners caught flame, reality convulsed. I felt the ground fracture beneath my feet. The throne cracked, spilling golden dust like blood. "Stop!" I cried, but the wind devoured my voice. Riven turned, reaching for me through the storm of magic. For a moment, his hand found mine. Heat, pain, forgiveness. Then the princess lunged, eyes wild with something older than hate. He stepped between us, and her blade found its mark. The world went silent, like breath caught between heartbeats. He fell without sound, only the whisper of silk and ash. I caught him, his weight unbearable in its stillness. The light around us dimmed to a trembling heartbeat. His eyes met mine, steady, impossibly calm. "Mara," he said, blood coloring his lips. "Don't let it end here." And then the eclipse swallowed the sun. I screamed, but the sound dissolved into brilliance. The key melted in my hand, fusing with the earth. The hall filled with symbols, gold lines crawling across stone. They wrapped around his body, weaving a spell I didn't know. It took him, or maybe saved him. I couldn't tell. All I knew was that I was alone again. I don't remember leaving the palace, only the cold that followed. The city lay in ruins, half buried under its own grandeur. Ash drifted like slow snowfall, whispering names of the lost. Some called it divine judgment, others, the birth of a new age. For me, it was simply the echo of his heartbeat fading. And still, the scent of violets clung to the air. The survivors looked to me as if I were an answer. I was nothing but the question they feared to ask. Each day, I wandered the healing tents, hands trembling over wounds. Their pain was something I could fix. Mine wasn't. At night, I wrote letters I'd never send. Ink became confession. Paper became prayer. One evening, a messenger arrived, cloak soaked in silver dust. He carried no words, only an amulet of blackened gold. When I touched it, the air shimmered, and I heard his voice. Soft, broken, yet real. "I'm still here." The amulet burned against my skin like a heartbeat. Hope is the cruelest form of resurrection. I followed the echo to the ruins beyond the forest. The carvings pulsed faintly beneath the ash. Whispers filled the wind. His voice and mine intertwined. The world around me throbbed with unfinished magic. It wanted something from me, something final. I feared what love might demand as payment. The next morning, I began to rebuild the infirmary. I called it the House of Echoes. It seemed fitting. People came, bringing their grief like offerings. Each patient left lighter, though I grew heavier. At night, I still felt him near the window. When I closed my eyes, the walls breathed his name. Every dawn, I promised myself not to look for him again. Every dusk, I broke that promise willingly. Grief became devotion. Devotion became ritual. The kingdom healed, but my heart refused to. Perhaps that was the cost of loving someone meant to die, or perhaps it was proof he'd never truly gone. Years later, the eclipse returned, softer, but still remembering. The House of Echoes thrived, its walls lined with silent prayers. On the eve of the celestial alignment, the air grew strange again. The same hum that once preceded ruin now sang like forgiveness. When I stepped outside, the sky split open with light, and there, in the reflection of the moon, I saw him. He looked unchanged, though time should have devoured us both. His eyes were the same storm I'd drowned in long ago. "Mara," he said, his voice woven from distance and mercy. "I'm bound between what was and what must be." I reached for him, my fingers meeting only cold air. But even illusions can feel like salvation. He told me the ruins had made him part of their magic, a guardian of memory, trapped between life and legend. "The key you used wasn't meant to free us," he said. "It was meant to bind what should never be broken." My heart clenched with the understanding of too late truth. We had saved the world by losing ourselves. "Then free yourself now," I pleaded, voice trembling. "I can't," he whispered. "Not until you forgive me." The moonlight bent, weaving around his fading form. I wanted to scream, to hold him, to curse the gods, but the words that left my mouth surprised us both. "I already did," he smiled, small, fragile, infinite. And then he was gone, leaving silence that glowed. The ground beneath my feet pulsed like a living promise. For the first time, I didn't feel alone in the world. Grief loosened its hands, letting me breathe again. Sometimes love ends only when you stop remembering. In the years that followed, the house became sanctuary and myth. Pilgrims came carrying broken relics, hearts, and faith. They called me the healer who spoke to shadows. I let them believe. The truth was quieter, smaller, truer. Every life I saved was a letter I wrote to him. Every cure was an apology turned to light. One night, a girl arrived with a wound that wouldn't close. Its edges shimmered with the same golden magic as the ruins. I recognized the pulse immediately. Riven's mark. The spell that had bound him was leaking into the world. It was his gift, or his warning, or both. Either way, it meant he was still keeping his promise. I placed my hands over the girl's heart and whispered the old words. The air vibrated, carrying echoes of his last breath. When the light faded, her wound was gone, replaced by a sigil, a delicate crescent, the shape of the eclipse reversed. She smiled, unknowing, free of the burden she carried. I smiled too, though tears blurred the miracle. That night I stood outside, watching stars rearrange themselves. Somewhere beyond them, I imagined him watching back. The moon glowed pale and forgiving above the ruins. I spoke softly to the wind. "We're still healing, Riven." The answer came as the scent of violets in the dark. Love, even broken, had learned how to breathe again. The people began calling the eclipse the lover's oath. Every cycle, they left letters at the ruins for those they'd lost. I never told them who started the tradition. Some secrets belonged to the silence that raised them, but each parchment rustled like wings when the wind blew. Maybe that was him reading every word aloud. And for the first time, I felt peace instead of longing. Not absence, not grief, just quiet continuation. He had become the story, and I the witness. Our love had survived translation into myth. The world had learned to remember kindly, and so had I. I'm old now, though time moves gently around me. The House of Echoes still stands, its windows full of dawn. Students learn the art of mending, unaware of its origin. They ask why the symbol above the door glows at night. I only smile and tell them, it listens, because somewhere, he still does. Tonight the eclipse returns one final time. The air hums with the same promise as our first meeting. I light a candle, place parchment before me, and begin to write. Each word flows easily, like blood remembering its path. My love, I begin. The world kept spinning without you, but I made sure it remembered how. Outside, the ruins shimmer with quiet gold. The students gather, faces lifted toward the heavens. When the light reaches its peak, I feel the room tremble. A figure forms within it, familiar, translucent, eternal. He smiles, and the candle doesn't flicker. For once, neither do I. I waited. I whisper, I know. He answers. He kneels beside me, hand warm against mine. The years fall away like unneeded armor. We don't speak of regret, only completion. The world hums approval, gentle and vast. The eclipse folds around us like a vow renewed. When the light fades, the chair is empty, the candle cold. Only the letter remains, sealed with violet wax. They'll find it tomorrow, signed with 2 names, one written in ink, one carved by time itself. And above it, faint but certain, a scent of rain and violets. The story ends where it always began, between heartbeats. They say every healer leaves a shadow that never dies. In the House of Echoes, that shadow hums like a lullaby. Travelers swear they see 2 figures at dusk, one made of light, one made of memory. They stand at the gate, watching, hand in hand. The air smells of violets and rain. No one remembers the war that birthed their legend, only the letters that saved a kingdom from forgetting. Each year, under the eclipse, candles bloom across the ruins. And if you listen closely, you can still hear her voice. Love is not the cure. It's the wound that teaches healing. The wind answers, always, with his name.